Mitch McConnell, who is the Senate Majority Leader, is married to Elaine Chao. She is the head of the Department of Transportation, otherwise known as DOT. Now, this marriage has brought up, in my opinion, what appears to be a huge conflict of interest, because McConnell, who is from Kentucky, can very easily touch base with his own wife to get deals for the state of Kentucky. And through a Freedom of Information Act and through an investigation by an organization that cares very much about this type of corruption, we have found that it does appear that the Department of Transportation has favorited Kentucky and its transportation projects over the projects of other states. So we'll give you some examples. Chao has met at least 10 times with politicians and business leaders from Kentucky in response to requests from McConnell's office. In some cases, those people later received what they were hoping for from Chao's department, including infrastructure grants, the designation of an interstate highway, and assistance in getting state funds for a highway project. So there are a number of email exchanges that kind of bear this out, that make this pretty obvious. In one email, just days after Chao was sworn in, McConnell's state director emailed her lieutenant asking the secretary to meet with maritime industry lobbyist Jim Adams about proposed changes to Buy American, Hire American requirements for offshore drilling equipment. The lobbyist donated $1,500 to McConnell's 2014 re-election campaign. So there's all sorts of things going on. There's campaign contributions. There's the fact that there's this, administration power couple situation happening. And what also really stood out to me, McConnell's been defending Trump pretty aggressively in any and all cases. And remember, Congress is supposed to serve as a check and a balance to the executive branch. If you know your wife is part of the administration, is part of the executive branch, can you really effectively do your job in serving as a check to that power?
That's interesting, getting your wife's your wife's boss fired, in a sense, if it was to go all the way to prosecuting him in the Senate. Okay, I find this story cute, and I'll tell you why. It's old school corruption, and for the Trump administration, I know the bar's been really, really lowered, but it seems not as bad as the other ones. I'm keeping it real, okay? So the $1,500 is fairly low amount, but that one seems to be the worst because it's a donor, right? So it's a donor to Mitch McConnell. His wife, Elaine Chao, running the Department of Transportation, goes, what can I do to help your donor? But that's Washington 101, okay? And in terms of the other projects, they even have, in my mind, less clarity on the quid pro quo. And so the Department of Transportation is going to do some projects in Kentucky. And Elaine Chao has two outs here. She's like, one, that's my home state. I'm gonna favor it a little bit. And that's normal, and that's what a lot of people do. You shouldn't, but okay. Number two, look, my husband happens to be the majority leader in the Senate. No matter who the majority leader was, and even if I wasn't related to them, that would be a very important constituent that the executive branch would care about. That part is also true, okay? So they've got a lot of outs here. So this is, it's not great, but of the different Trump scandals, to me, there's a little bit lower on the list.
Yeah, the reason why I wanted to cover this isn't even about the quid pro quo component of it, although of course I find that wrong. But you're right in that with all the corruption stories we cover, this is kind of further down the food chain. What really did stand out to me though is how much this undermines the checks and balances that we're supposed to have. And also, if I remember correctly, and I do remember correctly, Mitch McConnell was in the room when Andrew McCabe announced to the Gang of Eight that he was gonna launch that investigation on Trump and his potential ties with Russia. And so behind the scenes, okay, Mitch McConnell knows what's going on. He knows how much of a bad guy Trump is, but publicly, he will do Trump's bidding. He will support Trump, he will defend Trump, he will do whatever it takes publicly. And so I think that conflict of interest there is really a huge problem, because Look, we know that right now our democratic system of government is in jeopardy. There are all sorts of conflicts here. There's all sorts of corruption. But just on the very superficial level, there's supposed to be a system of checks and balances. And he is the Senate majority leader. How are you gonna expect him to do his job properly if he has that huge conflict of interest within the administration?
Yeah, last two things on this is, look, American Oversight did a good job. They got a Freedom of Information request. It's great investigation in that sense. And they got all these emails. But the reality is, if Elaine Chao and Mitch McConnell were gonna do something really corrupt, they wouldn't send an email about it. They'd live together. They could just talk to one another. So it's awfully hard to catch them on a big fish story by going to the emails of their underlings.
Oh man, what kind of conversations do you think they have?
I don't even want to know.
Gross.
Okay, I don't want to know. And the last part of it is, look, I got a little house of cards here, right? Why is this smaller story coming out? Is it to deflect attention from what could be larger stories? And now this is total speculation, okay? The minute Elaine Chao was put into office, first of all, let's just also acknowledge there's logic in it, right? She's worked in other administrations before. She's a well-known Republican right-winger. She's married to the most important senator on the Republican side. Okay, keep it real, those are real considerations, right? But it's the Department of Transportation. Her family from Taiwan has a giant transportation business.
Yeah.
I would keep the eye on that ball. I'm not saying they did anything wrong because we don't have any evidence of that yet. But that would be a much larger story. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.